I never thought much about my laugh until Vanessa Hampton called it the most grating sound in existence during our senior showcase. Standing in the wings of our university's theater, I watched her perfect face contort with annoyance as my laugh echoed across the auditorium. It wasn't even that loud, just a reaction to my friend Layla's whispered joke about our drama professor's toupee sliding off mid-speech. Jesus Christ, Eliza. Do you have to sound like a dying seagull every time someone says something remotely funny? Vanessa hissed, her voice low but sharp enough to slice through my confidence. Your laugh is fucking annoying. The words hit like a physical blow. I remember how the air left my lungs, how my cheeks burned hot with embarrassment as several of our classmates snickered in agreement. Vanessa Hampton, campus darling, future star, the girl with the perfect soprano that had talent scouts practically throwing themselves at her feet, had deemed my natural expression of joy unworthy. And just like that, something inside me withered. It wasn't just about my laugh. It was everything Vanessa had systematically picked apart during our 4 years at Westlake's prestigious performing arts program. My regional accent, that still carried hints of my rural upbringing despite years of vocal training, my thrift store wardrobe when everyone else wore designer labels, the way I sang from my heart instead of with perfect technical precision. But my laugh, that was personal. That was taking something pure and unself-conscious and making it ugly. I didn't make another sound that night. I performed my scene mechanically, delivered my lines with hollow precision, and then disappeared before the after-party. No one noticed. No one except Layla, who sent 17 increasingly worried text messages that I couldn't bring myself to answer. Back in my cramped off-campus apartment, I sat in front of my bathroom mirror and laughed deliberately, testing the sound that had apparently been offending people for years without my knowledge. It bubbled up from my chest, a cascade of bright staccato notes that rose and fell with genuine abandon. It was loud. It was distinctive. It was definitely not the demure, controlled titter that Vanessa employed at precisely timed intervals. I recorded it on my phone, then played it back, trying to hear what others heard. Was it really that bad, that intrusive, that worthy of scorn? I never came to a conclusion because I fell asleep that night with dried tears on my face and woke up the next morning with a sore throat that developed into laryngitis. By the time graduation rolled around 2 weeks later, I still hadn't fully recovered my voice, a fact that Vanessa noted with thinly disguised relief when we were all saying our goodbyes. Throat still bothering you? Maybe it's a sign from the universe, she said with a sympathetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. Not everyone is meant for this business, Eliza. There's no shame in finding a path better suited to your natural abilities. I nodded and rasped out pleasantries while mentally calculating how quickly I could escape this conversation, this campus, this humiliation. 3 days later, I declined the small theater apprenticeship I'd been offered in Chicago, canceled my lease renewal, and bought a one-way ticket to Seattle, about as far as I could get from New York without leaving the continental United States. I told myself I was just taking a break, gathering myself. I told myself I wasn't running away. I told myself I would laugh again someday, and I was wrong about that last part. For nearly 2 years, I didn't laugh, not really. I'd trained myself to suppress it, to convert the impulse into a smile, a nod, sometimes a soft HM of acknowledgement when something amused me. The genuine, unfiltered sound had been locked away, deemed too disruptive, too attention-grabbing, too much. Seattle treated me well enough. I found a job at an indie bookstore owned by a retired English professor who didn't mind that I communicated mostly in nods and brief sentences for the first few months. I made acquaintances who didn't ask too many questions. I built a life that was quiet, contained, and utterly devoid of the dreams I'd once harbored. I stayed away from theaters, from music venues, from anywhere that might remind me of the path I'd abandoned. I told myself I was healing, adapting, finding a new way forward. Then came the day I died, or at least the old Eliza did. It was raining because, of course it was. Seattle in November is a special kind of wet misery. I was rushing from the bus stop to the bookstore, already 10 minutes late for my shift, when I slipped on a patch of wet leaves and stumbled directly into the path of a delivery van. I remember the screech of brakes, the shout of the driver, the oddly peaceful moment of suspension as my body flew through the air. Then, nothing. The beeping was the first thing I noticed, steady, rhythmic, Annoying as hell. The second thing was the pain, a full body throb that pulsed from somewhere deep in my core and radiated outward. "She's awake," someone said, and suddenly there were hands on me, lights in my eyes, voices asking questions I couldn't process. I tried to speak, but my throat felt like I'd swallowed broken glass. When I finally managed to form words, what came out was a raspy whisper that didn't sound like me at all. "What happened?" "You were hit by a van, Miss Reynolds," said a woman in scrubs with tired eyes and a kind smile. "You've been unconscious for 3 days. You have several broken ribs, a fractured pelvis, and you required surgery to repair internal bleeding." She continued listing my injuries, but I was stuck on 3 days. 3 days gone, just like that. "Your vocal cords are bruised from the intubation tube," she added, noticing how I winced when trying to speak. "That should resolve in a week or so, but until then, try to rest your voice." Rest my voice. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent the past 2 years barely using my voice anyway, at least not for anything meaningful. What was a little longer? The next week passed in a blur of pain medication, physical therapy consultations, and insurance paperwork. The bookstore owner visited, bringing flowers and assurances that my job would be waiting when I recovered. A few acquaintances sent cards. Layla called from New York when she heard, crying over the phone, about how she'd almost lost me without resolving the weird distance that had grown between us after graduation. I wanted to tell her it wasn't her fault, that I'd been the one to pull away, but all I could manage were a few hoarse words before the pain in my throat became too much. "Rest, recover, then call me," she said firmly. "We have a lot to catch up on." The doctor who discharged me explained that while my physical injuries would heal with time and proper care, the accident had caused some nerve damage to my vocal cords. "Your voice will likely be different from what you're used to," he explained, reviewing my chart. "The timbre, pitch, even your laughing and coughing patterns might change. It's not uncommon after this type of trauma." I nodded, not particularly concerned. My voice had been little more than a functional tool for so long that the prospect of it changing didn't feel significant. How wrong I was. The first time I heard my new voice, truly heard it, was 2 weeks after leaving the hospital. I was alone in my apartment, attempting some of the vocal exercises the speech therapist had recommended. Simple sounds at first, then words, then sentences. "Hello, my name is Eliza Reynolds," I said to my empty living room, and then froze. The voice that came out of me was different. Lower, richer, with a slight smoky quality that reminded me of vintage jazz singers. Gone was the light, sometimes breathy tone I'd had since adolescence. In its place was something that sounded more grounded, more mature. I grabbed my phone and recorded myself reading a random paragraph from the novel on my coffee table. When I played it back, I hardly recognized the sound as my own. It wasn't just the pitch, there was a new resonance, a texture that hadn't been there before. Curious, I tried to laugh. What emerged wasn't the bright cascade that Vanessa had so viciously mocked. Instead, a low, warm chuckle rolled out of me, smooth and rich like honey, with none of the staccato peaks that had characterized my old laugh. I laughed again, deliberately this time, and felt the vibration in a completely different part of my chest. The sound filled the room effortlessly, without being overly loud or jarring. It was beautiful. I spent the rest of the afternoon experimenting with my new voice, reading aloud from books, singing snippets of songs I remembered from my theater days, even recording myself telling jokes and then laughing at them. Each time, the same lush, velvety tones emerged, consistent, controlled without feeling artificial, and utterly unlike the voice that had been deemed too annoying, too much, too unrefined. For the first time since that night in the wings of our university theater, I felt a spark of something like possibility. When I returned to the bookstore part-time the following week, customers did double takes when I spoke. My boss raised her eyebrows after hearing me talk to a patron about a new release. "Your accident gave you the voice of a 1940s radio star," she commented during a quiet moment. "If you ever get tired of selling books, you could make a fortune doing voice work." The casual remark planted a seed. That night, I looked up voice acting classes in Seattle, then found myself searching for agencies that represented voice talent. I watched YouTube tutorials about creating home recording setups and building voice demo reels. And before I knew it, I'd fallen down a rabbit hole of possibilities I hadn't allowed myself to consider since fleeing New York. The performing arts world had seemed closed to me after graduation, partly by choice, partly by wounded pride. But voice work? That felt like a different avenue altogether. One where my face, my background, my laugh wouldn't matter. Only the sound I could produce. I signed up for a 6-week intro to voice acting workshop, scheduled to begin as soon as my doctor cleared me for more regular activities. I ordered a decent USB microphone and acoustical foam panels from my bedroom closet. I downloaded audio editing software and began to learn its basics. For the first time in nearly 2 years, I felt a flutter of excitement about my future. Not resignation, not quiet acceptance, actual excitement. The universe, it seemed, had quite literally knocked some sense into me. Vanessa Hampton's opinion had shaped my life for too long. My new voice felt like a second chance, a rebirth of possibilities. Little did I know just how directly those possibilities would intersect with the past I'd tried so hard to leave behind. Again, but this time, I need you to sound like you actually want the product, not like you're being forced to sell it at gunpoint, said Dennis, my voice acting coach, over the studio headphones. I sighed, took a sip of water, and reset my posture behind the microphone. This was our 4th session, and while Dennis claimed I had natural talent and one of the most marketable voices he'd heard in years, I still struggled with commercial reads. My theatrical training kept pulling me toward dramatic interpretation rather than the conversational tone most advertisers wanted. Happy Horizons Travel makes your dream vacation effortless. Just click, book, and start packing. We handle the rest. Happy Horizons, where your adventure begins, I read, trying to inject warmth and enthusiasm without sounding fake. Better, Dennis nodded approvingly. Still a bit too precise, though. Loosen up. Imagine you're telling your best friend about this amazing travel site you found. My best friend. Unbidden, Layla's face popped into my mind. Not as she was now, but as she'd been during our college years, staying up late to run lines with me, bringing me tea with honey before performances, defending me when Vanessa and her crowd got particularly vicious. I took a deep breath and tried again, picturing myself telling Layla about this travel site over coffee, the way we used to share discoveries in our student days. Happy Horizons Travel makes your dream vacation effortless. Just click, book, and start packing. We handle the rest. Happy Horizons, where your adventure begins. Dennis's face lit up. That's it. That's exactly what I've been trying to get from you. Whatever you just accessed emotionally, hold on to it. That's your commercial sweet spot. By the end of the workshop, I had developed what Dennis called a considerable range for voice work. From warm and conversational for commercials to authoritative for corporate narration, to character voices for animation. My favorite, though, was audiobook narration, where I could draw on my acting background to bring stories to life without the self-consciousness of being physically on stage. With Dennis's help, I put together a demo reel and submitted it to 3 voice talent agencies in Seattle. 2 weeks later, I had signed with Cascadia Voice Talent and booked my first small job, a series of phone system prompts for a local credit union. It wasn't glamorous, but hearing, "For checking account information, press 1," in my voice when calling the bank gave me a strange thrill. I was out there in the world again, my voice serving a purpose beyond basic communication. Small jobs led to slightly larger ones. A radio spot for a furniture warehouse. Safety narration for an instructional video. The voice of a minor character in a locally produced animated web series. 6 months after the accident that had changed my voice and redirected my life, I was making enough from voice work to cut back my bookstore hours to part-time. I had converted my bedroom closet into a surprisingly effective home recording booth and was steadily building a client list. I still hadn't laughed publicly. That remained something I did only in private, still half afraid that someone would find it annoying or excessive. But I was speaking more, expressing more, gradually reclaiming parts of myself that had gone dormant after Vanessa's cutting remarks. Then came the audition that would change everything. It's for a national campaign, my agent Tanya explained over the phone. A new sleep aid product called Dreamies. They want a voice that sounds soothing but authentic. Their words, not mine. The catch is they need someone who can do an authentic sounding laugh for the tagline. Apparently, they've done consumer research showing that a genuine laugh makes people trust the product more. I hesitated. A laugh? I'm not sure. Before you say no, the pay is incredible, Tanya continued. We're talking 5 figures for the initial session, plus residuals if they run the spots nationally. And I've heard your laugh during our meetings, Eliza. It's warm and inviting, exactly what they're looking for. Had I laughed during our meetings? I couldn't recall doing so intentionally, but perhaps the occasional chuckle had slipped out as I grew more comfortable in my new professional skin. I'll send you the audition copy, Tanya said, taking my silence as consideration rather than panic. Just record it at home and send it over by tomorrow afternoon. What do you have to lose? What indeed? Only the protective wall I'd built around the most vulnerable part of my self-expression. After hanging up, I paced my apartment for nearly an hour, fluctuating between determination and terror. The script itself was simple enough. A brief introduction of the product, its benefits, and then the tagline, Dreamies, sleep so good you'll wake up laughing. Followed by, according to the direction notes, a warm, genuine laugh. Eventually, I sat down in my makeshift recording booth, positioned the microphone, and read the commercial copy. The words flowed easily. My commercial voice had become second nature. But when I reached the final line, I froze. Dreamies, sleep so good you'll wake up laughing. Silence. I tried again, pushing myself to add a small chuckle at the end. What came out sounded forced, awkward. I deleted the recording and started over. 3 times. 4, 5. On the 6th attempt, frustrated with myself and the whole situation, I decided to try something different. I closed my eyes and thought about the most genuinely funny moment I could remember. Not from recent years, but from before. Before Vanessa. Before I started policing my own joy. The memory surfaced immediately. Sophomore year, an improv class exercise gone hilariously wrong when our professor demonstrated a character walk and split his pants completely up the back seam. The absolute shock on his face, followed by his own booming laugh at his predicament, had sent our entire class into hysterics. I had laughed so hard I'd nearly fallen out of my chair, tears streaming down my face. With that memory bright in my mind, I read the script one more time. Dreamies, sleep so good you'll wake up laughing. And then I laughed, truly laughed, for the first time in public in nearly 3 years. The sound that filled my small recording booth was rich and melodious, starting as a low chuckle and building into something full and uninhibited without being jarring. It was nothing like my old laugh, yet it contained the same genuine quality of unfiltered joy. Without allowing myself to overthink, I quickly exported the file and sent it to Tanya with a brief note. Here's my audition for Dreamies. Let me know what you think. Then I closed my laptop and went for a long walk, trying not to replay the sound of my laughter over and over in my head. Tanya called the next morning. They want you, she said without preamble. Said your laugh was exactly what they've been searching for. Authentic, but soothing. The creative director actually used the phrase audio gold. They want to record next week in LA. Can you make that work? I stood in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, momentarily speechless. Eliza, are you there? This is a big deal. Yes, I managed. Yes, I can make that work. Excellent. I'll email you the details. Congratulations. This could be your breakout campaign. After hanging up, I sank onto my couch, overcome with a strange mixture of emotions. Pride, certainly. Excitement about the opportunity. But also a lingering sense of vindication that felt both petty and powerfully healing. My laugh, the very sound I'd been shamed into suppressing, was now being described as audio gold. For the first time, I allowed myself to wonder where Vanessa Hampton had ended up after graduation. Last I'd heard through Layla's occasional updates, she'd been making the rounds of New York auditions, confident that her perfect soprano and classical training would land her a Broadway role within months. Had it worked out that way? Or had the real world been less impressed by her technical perfection than our professors had been? I pushed the thought away. It didn't matter. I was moving forward, rebuilding the confidence that had been shattered, finding success on my own terms. Vanessa Hampton's opinion of my laugh, or anything else about me, was irrelevant. Or so I thought. Los Angeles in April was sunny and mild. A a stark contrast to Seattle's lingering spring drizzle. The recording studio was in Burbank, a sleek, modern space with state-of-the-art equipment and walls adorned with posters of famous campaigns they'd produced. I was nervous but prepared, having practiced the script dozens of times, including the all-important laugh at the end. The creative team, a director, producer, and two advertising executives, greeted me warmly when I arrived. "That laugh of yours is something special," said the director, a woman in her 40s with an impressive resume of national campaigns. "So many voice actors try too hard to sound natural. Yours has an authenticity we rarely find." I smiled, accepting the compliment without mentioning the years I'd spent deliberately not laughing, the way I'd had to excavate joy like an archaeological artifact. The recording session went smoothly. I delivered the lines with the warm, reassuring tone they wanted, and when it came time for the laugh, I closed my eyes and summoned the same genuine amusement I'd accessed during my audition. "Perfect on the first take," the producer said, sounding impressed. "Let's get a few more variations for options, but honestly, that initial one might be all we need." 2 hours later, we'd wrapped the session. The team was thrilled, I was exhilarated, and Tanya was already texting me about potential follow-up work based on the client's enthusiastic response. "They're planning a major multi-platform rollout," she wrote. "TV, streaming, radio, podcast spots. Your voice is about to be everywhere." She wasn't exaggerating. Within a month, the Dreamies campaign launched nationally. My soothing description of the sleep aid's benefits, followed by that signature laugh, played during primetime television, popular podcasts, streaming services, and radio stations. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Sales of Dreamies skyrocketed, and the marketing team credited the uniquely trustworthy and relaxing voice of their campaign as a key factor. Social media buzzed with comments about that laugh in the Dreamies commercial, how genuine it sounded, how it made people smile reflexively when they heard it. Suddenly, I was in demand. Tanya's phone rang constantly with requests for the Dreamies voice. I recorded spots for everything from luxury car brands to organic food delivery services. My bank account swelled, and I was able to quit the bookstore entirely to focus on voice work. I upgraded my home recording setup, hired a voice coach to help me maintain vocal health with my increased workload, and even started looking at condos to buy, a financial step I'd never imagined taking in my bookstore clerk days. Through it all, I remained relatively anonymous. Voice actors rarely achieve the fame of on-screen personalities, which suited me perfectly. I could walk into any store, restaurant, or coffee shop without being recognized, even as my voice and laugh played on the radio in those very establishments. It was a strange kind of success, public yet private, visible yet unseen. 4 months after the Dreamies campaign launched, I finally fulfilled my promise to reconnect properly with Layla. We'd been texting more regularly, and I'd briefly mentioned my new career, but I hadn't gone into detail about how significant it had become. We arranged a video call on a Sunday afternoon, evening in New York, where she was still pursuing her theater dreams. "Oh my God, look at you," she exclaimed when my face appeared on her screen. "You're glowing, Eliza. Seattle must be treating you well." I smiled, genuinely happy to see her familiar face. "It has its moments. How's New York? How's the acting world?" Layla made a so-so gesture with her hand. "Brutal as always, but I'm hanging in there. Got a supporting role in an off-Broadway production that opens next month. The pay is laughable, but the part is juicy. That's amazing. I knew you'd make it." "Make it is a strong term," she laughed. "I'm still waitressing 4 nights a week to make rent. Speaking of which, you'll never guess who came into the restaurant last night." "Who?" "Vanessa Hampton." The name still had the power to make my stomach clench, even after all this time. "Oh?" I tried to sound casual. "How is she? Broadway star yet?" Layla snorted. "Hardly. She's been bouncing between chorus roles and commercial auditions. Apparently, directors find her technically perfect but lacking emotional authenticity. Her words, not mine." A petty part of me enjoyed this information more than I cared to admit. "Anyway," Layla continued, "she's subletting a ridiculously expensive apartment in Chelsea that she can barely afford. She spent most of dinner complaining about how her career should have taken off by now, how unfair the industry is, blah, blah, blah. Some things never change," I murmured, "right? But enough about her. Tell me about this voice acting thing you mentioned. Is it fun?" I hesitated, then decided to share the full extent of my success. It's more than fun, actually. It's become my career. I'm the voice of Dreamies. Layla's eyes widened. The sleep aid? With that incredible laugh at the end of the commercials? That's you. I nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and embarrassment. Holy shit, Eliza. Those ads are everywhere. I hear that laugh at least 3 times a day on Spotify. Everyone talks about how genuine it sounds. She leaned closer to her camera. Wait, is that your real laugh now? It sounds so different from. She stopped abruptly, and I knew she was thinking of my old laugh, the one Vanessa had mocked so viciously. From my old one? I finished for her. Yes, it is. The accident changed my vocal cords. New voice, new laugh. That's wild, Layla said softly, and kind of ironic considering. She didn't need to finish the thought. We both knew what she meant. Yeah, I agreed, kind of ironic. We talked for another hour, catching up on other aspects of our lives, promising to stay in better touch. Before we hung up, Layla mentioned one more thing about Vanessa. You know what's really funny? That Dreamies commercial you're in? It plays during this trashy reality show Vanessa watches religiously. She probably hears your voice every week without having any idea it's you. I laughed, a genuine, full-bodied expression of my new laugh, and saw Layla's face light up in response. It really is a beautiful laugh, Eliza, she said. I'm glad you found it again. After we disconnected, I sat with that thought for a long time. I had found my laugh again. Different in sound, but the same in spirit. And somewhere in New York, the woman who had crushed my confidence was unknowingly listening to it, perhaps even admiring it. The universe had a strange sense of symmetry sometimes. The email from Tanya arrived on a Tuesday morning. Subject line, huge opportunity, call me ASAP. I was in my new condo, a bright corner unit with large windows overlooking Elliott Bay, reviewing scripts for an audiobook I was scheduled to record the following week. I called Tanya immediately. What's up? Dreamies wants to expand the campaign, she said, her voice brimming with excitement. They're planning a series of mini documentaries about sleep health, narrated by you, of course, but here's the kicker. They want to create a social media campaign featuring the face behind the voice. My stomach dropped. The face behind the voice? Yes, they want to do a reveal. Show the woman with America's most soothing laugh. It would involve some on-camera work, interviews, behind-the-scenes content. They're offering a significant bump in compensation, of course. I sat down heavily on my couch. After nearly a year of professional success safely hidden behind a microphone, the prospect of stepping in front of a camera triggered all my old insecurities. I don't know, Tanya. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that level of visibility. I understand your hesitation, she said, her tone softening. But consider this. You've created something special with your voice. People connect with it, trust it. Letting them see the person behind that voice could take your career to a whole new level. Plus, the campaign would be carefully managed. Professional stylists, photographers, the works. I promised to think about it, knowing even as I hung up that I was probably going to say yes. Not because I craved fame or validation, but because it felt like the final step in reclaiming the confidence I'd lost years ago in that theater wing. After a few days of consideration and a detailed review of the proposal, I agreed to the campaign. The timeline was tight. They wanted to launch within a month, coinciding with National Sleep Awareness Week. What followed was a whirlwind of activity. I flew to New York for a professional photo shoot, worked with a stylist who dressed me in clothes I would never have chosen but somehow looked perfect, sat for interviews with health and wellness publications, and filmed behind-the-scenes content for social media. Throughout it all, I kept reminding myself that this visibility was on my terms, a choice I was making from a position of strength, not something thrust upon me when I was vulnerable and uncertain. The campaign was scheduled to launch on a Monday with a coordinated release across Dreamies' social media platforms, a feature in a major women's magazine, and an appearance on a popular morning health and wellness podcast. The Sunday before, I received a text from Layla. You're not going to believe this. Vanessa just posted that she landed a big national commercial campaign. She's being all mysterious about it, but said the big reveal is tomorrow. What are the chances she's involved with Dreamies somehow? My heart stopped. It couldn't be. The universe couldn't possibly be that poetically aligned. I texted back, that seems unlikely. Did she say anything specific about what kind of campaign? No, just that it's her big break, and everyone will see it everywhere. Classic Vanessa exaggeration, probably. I told myself Layla was right. New York was full of commercial opportunities. The chances that Vanessa had somehow landed a role in the same campaign that was about to reveal me as the voice of Dreamies were astronomically small. And yet, as I tried to sleep that night, a nagging suspicion kept me tossing and turning. I hadn't asked many questions about the visual direction of the campaign, trusting the creative team's vision. What if they'd cast actors to appear alongside me? What if one of those actors was Vanessa? By morning, I'd convinced myself I was being paranoid. I checked my phone, found the final social media post that would kick off the campaign, and braced myself to see my face presented to the world alongside my now famous voice and laugh. The video began with the familiar Dreamies commercial audio, my voice describing the product, followed by the tagline and my signature laugh. Then, a transition. You know the voice? Now meet the woman behind America's most soothing laugh. A series of beautiful shots from our photo shoot appeared, showing me in a soft-lit studio, at the microphone, smiling warmly at the camera. My name appeared in elegant typography. Eliza Reynolds, the voice of Dreamies. The final frame showed me laughing naturally with text inviting viewers to follow Eliza's journey as she shares her sleep tips and voice behind the scenes. I exhaled slowly. It was tasteful, professional, and focused entirely on me. No other actors, no Vanessa. My paranoia had been unfounded. Then my phone began to buzz incessantly. Notifications poured in as the campaign went live across multiple platforms. Tanya called to tell me the initial response was phenomenal, and that I should prepare for a busy day of virtual interviews. Among the flood of messages was another text from Layla. Holy shit, Eliza. Vanessa just realized you're the Dreamies voice. She's freaking out. My fingers trembled slightly as I typed back, What do you mean? She just posted a rant on her private Instagram about how she can't believe some girl from college, whose annoying laugh used to drive everyone crazy, is now the voice of this major campaign. She didn't name you, but it's obviously about you. She sounds jealous. A strange calm settled over me. After all these years, all the pain and self-doubt, all the work to rebuild myself, Vanessa Hampton was still the same person, unable to celebrate others' success, quick to tear down what she couldn't control. I started to type a response to Layla, then paused. Instead, I opened Instagram and searched for Vanessa's public profile. Her most recent post was a professionally shot headshot with a caption about exciting news coming soon, and hashtags suggesting commercial work. On impulse, I liked the photo and left a comment. Congratulations on your upcoming project, Vanessa. It's wonderful to see fellow Westlake alums succeeding in the industry. Wishing you all the best. Then I put down my phone and made myself a cup of tea, smiling at the knowledge that my simple, gracious comment would likely infuriate her far more than any direct confrontation. An hour later, my publicist for the campaign called, her voice tight with controlled urgency. Eliza, are you aware of a Vanessa Hampton? She's been posting some unflattering comments about you on social media. Nothing explicit enough to take action on, but definitely attempting to undermine the campaign launch. I'm aware, I said calmly. She's a former classmate who's struggling with her own career. I wouldn't worry about it. Her reach is limited. Well, there's a development you should know about. She apparently applied for a speaking role in one of the upcoming Dreamies television spots. The ones where we're adding actors to scenarios of people waking up refreshed. The casting director recognized her name from the social media situation and called us. I held my breath, waiting for the next part. We've decided not to consider her for the role, obviously. But here's the interesting part. She listed her current address on her audition form. She's living in a building owned by RivCorp Development. And that's significant because RivCorp is a subsidiary of Horizon Health, which owns Dreamies. Essentially, Vanessa Hampton is renting an apartment owned by the parent company of the product you're the voice of. The symmetry was so perfect I couldn't help but laugh. My real laugh. The one that had become nationally recognized. The one that had once been deemed the most grating sound in existence. Are you saying... I started, trying to process this information. I'm saying that a portion of Vanessa Hampton's rent is essentially being paid by the success of the Dreamies campaign. Your voice, your laugh, is contributing to the corporate profits that maintain her apartment building. I sat down, momentarily speechless. The universe really did have a twisted sense of humor. Eliza, are you okay? The publicist asked when I didn't respond. I'm fine, I assured her, just appreciating the irony of the situation. We wanted to make you aware in case she escalates her comments. The legal team is monitoring the situation, but so far she hasn't crossed any lines that would warrant action. After hanging up, I called Layla, needing to share this development with someone who would truly understand its significance. No way, she breathed when I explained the connection. That's too perfect. Are you going to tell her? Tell her what? Hey, remember when you made fun of my laugh? Well, now it's helping pay your rent. That seems petty. It would be petty, Layla agreed, and also completely satisfying. We both laughed, and I realized with sudden clarity that I no longer cared what Vanessa thought. Of my laugh, my voice, my success, any of it. Somewhere along the way, I had finally, truly let go of the power she'd held over me. Actually, I said, I think I'm going to focus on the campaign and let the universe handle the rest. Vanessa can stew in her own jealousy without any help from me. Very mature, Layla said, sounding slightly disappointed. But I guess that's why you're the one with the national ad campaign and she's the one posting bitter Instagram rants. The Dreamies Face Behind the Voice campaign exceeded all expectations. My social media following grew exponentially, requests for voice work poured in, and I even received offers for on-camera commercial work, opportunities I politely declined, preferring to keep my focus on voice acting. 2 months after the launch, I was scheduled to appear at a wellness convention in New York as a guest speaker on a panel about sleep health. It would be my first public speaking appearance, and despite my newfound confidence, I was nervous about being on stage again, even if this time it was as myself, not a character. Layla insisted I stay with her instead of at the hotel provided by the convention organizers. We'll make it a proper reunion, she said. I'll show you all the best spots in my neighborhood, and you can see my shoebox apartment that costs 3 times your Seattle mortgage. I agreed eagerly, looking forward to spending time with my friend in person after so many years of distance, both geographical and emotional. What I didn't tell Layla was that I'd arranged a side trip during my New York visit. Dreamies had recently launched a sponsorship program for performing arts scholarships at several universities, including our alma mater, Westlake. As the voice of the brand, I'd been invited to announce the program at a small ceremony on campus. The thought of returning to Westlake was both terrifying and exhilarating. I'd left under such a cloud of shame and self-doubt, slinking away with my dreams in tatters. Coming back as a successful professional, as someone whose voice and laugh had become valuable assets instead of liabilities, felt like closing a circle that had been left painfully open. I arrived in New York on a crisp fall day, almost 3 years to the date from when Vanessa had made her cutting remark about my laugh. Layla met me at the airport, and we spent the evening catching up over wine and takeout in her tiny but charming apartment. So, she said casually as we were finishing our second glass of wine, word on the street is that Vanessa might be at your panel tomorrow. I nearly choked. What? Why would she be there? Layla shrugged. Apparently, she's been doing some wellness brand promotions on her Instagram, trying to pivot into influencer territory since the acting thing isn't taking off as she planned. One of my friends saw her name on the attendee list for the convention. Great, I muttered. Just what I need before public speaking. Vanessa Hampton's judgmental gaze from the audience. Hey, Layla said firmly, you're not that scared college student anymore. You're Eliza Reynolds, the voice of Dreamies, a successful voice actor whose laugh people literally pay money to hear. Who cares if Vanessa is there? She was right, of course. I had no reason to feel intimidated. Still, I spent extra time on my appearance the next morning, choosing a sleek, professional outfit that made me feel confident and polished. If I was going to face my former tormentor, I wanted to look my best. The convention center was bustling when I arrived, attendees moving between sessions, exhibitors setting up elaborate displays, speakers huddling with their panels. The Dreamies booth was one of the largest, featuring comfortable seating areas where convention-goers could rest while listening to audio clips narrated by me. It was surreal seeing my face on the backdrop, my voice playing from hidden speakers, my laugh punctuating the brand's tagline every few minutes. My panel wasn't until the afternoon, so I spent the morning touring the exhibition hall, occasionally being recognized by attendees who'd seen the campaign or industry professionals who'd worked with me remotely. I was chatting with a podcast producer when I spotted her, Vanessa Hampton, standing near the Dreamies booth, staring at my image on the display with an unreadable expression. She looked much the same as she had in college, perfectly put together, conventionally beautiful, with that air of controlled poise that had always made her seem more sophisticated than the rest of us. For a moment, I considered avoiding her entirely. There was no reason to interact, no obligation to acknowledge our past connection. But something inside me, perhaps the same impulse that had led me to accept the Face Behind the Voice campaign, pushed me forward. "Hello, Vanessa," I said, approaching her with an outstretched hand. "It's been a long time." She turned, and the flash of recognition in her eyes was followed immediately by a complex mix of emotions: surprise, embarrassment, calculation, and finally, a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Eliza Reynolds," she said, taking my hand briefly. "This is unexpected." "Is it? I'm speaking on the sleep health panel this afternoon. I assumed that's why you're here, given your interest in wellness brands." Her smile tightened further. "Yes, I've been expanding my personal brand into the wellness space. It's a natural fit with my performance background." An awkward silence fell between us. I could see her gaze flickering to the Dreamies display, to my face on the backdrop, to the small crowd of people listening to a promotional audio track in which my laugh featured prominently. "Your voice sounds different," she finally said. "In the ads, I didn't recognize it was you." "I was in an accident a few years ago," I explained. "It changed my vocal cords." New voice, new laugh. "Right, the laugh." She shifted uncomfortably. "It's distinctive." I couldn't help but smile at her obvious discomfort. "Yes, it is. Apparently, it's also quite marketable. Funny how things work out, isn't it?" Before she could respond, my publicist appeared at my elbow, politely informing me that I was needed for a pre-panel meeting with the other speakers. "It was nice seeing you, Vanessa," I said, meaning it more than I expected to. "Good luck with your wellness ventures." As I walked away, I felt lighter somehow, as if the final weight of our past interaction had been lifted. Vanessa Hampton was just a person, a somewhat insecure, stalled performer trying to reinvent herself, not the towering figure of judgment and scorn that had dominated my memories for so long. The panel went brilliantly. I spoke about my experience voicing the Dreamies campaign, shared some basic voice care tips that had helped me maintain vocal health, and even demonstrated my now famous laugh when prompted by the moderator, earning appreciative applause from the audience. Vanessa was there, sitting near the back, her expression carefully neutral. When the panel ended and attendees rushed forward to ask questions or take photos, she slipped out without attempting to speak to me again. That evening, as Layla and I were getting ready for dinner, I received an email notification that made me pause. "What is it?" Layla asked, noticing my expression. It's from Vanessa," I said, staring at my phone in disbelief. The email was brief, but clearly difficult for her to write. "Eliza, after seeing you today, I feel compelled to address our last significant interaction at Westlake. My comment about your laugh was cruel and unnecessary. I was insecure about my own prospects and took it out on you in a moment I'm not proud of. Your success is well-deserved, and your current laugh is indeed distinctive in the best way. I appreciate the gracious way you greeted me today despite our history. Best wishes for your continued success, Vanessa." I read it aloud to Layla, who whistled low. "That's as close to an apology as Vanessa Hampton is capable of producing," she said. "Are you going to respond?" I thought about it for a moment, then nodded, typing a quick reply. "Vanessa, thank you for your email. The past is the past, and we've all said things we regret. I wish you success in your wellness endeavors and hope you find the right path for your talents. Warm regards, Eliza." "Very diplomatic," Layla commented, reading over my shoulder. "I might have been more petty." I laughed, fully and freely, without a hint of self-consciousness. What would be the point? I've already won in the ways that matter. 2 days later, I stood in the familiar auditorium at Westlake, announcing the Dreamies Performing Arts Scholarship Program to a room full of current students and faculty. The scholarship would provide funding for students showing promise in voice, theater, music, or dance, with an emphasis on supporting those from disadvantaged backgrounds. As I explained the details of the program, I couldn't help but think of my younger self, sitting in these same seats, dreaming of a future in performing arts, while fighting the constant battle of not feeling good enough, wealthy enough, polished enough. The performing arts world can be challenging, I told the students. You'll face rejection, criticism, sometimes even cruelty. People will tell you to change fundamental things about yourself to fit some arbitrary standard. What I've learned is that the very things that make you distinctive, the qualities others might try to diminish, are often your greatest strengths. I paused, surveying the eager faces before me. My laugh once made someone tell me I sounded like a dying seagull, I admitted, earning surprised chuckles from the audience. Now that same laugh, albeit in a slightly different form, is my signature professional asset. The lesson? Be authentically yourself, even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. After the ceremony, I spent time talking with students, many of whom asked about breaking into voice acting or how to develop their own distinctive sound. I gave what advice I could, emphasizing that the path rarely looks like what you expect. Later, walking through the campus one last time before heading to the airport, I found myself near the theater building where it had all begun, or ended, depending on how you looked at it. On impulse, I stepped inside, making my way to the wings where Vanessa had delivered her cutting remark years ago. The space was empty now, peaceful in the late afternoon light filtering through high windows. I stood in the exact spot where I'd stood that night, feeling the ghost of that old pain, but now from a distance, like looking at a photograph of a difficult time rather than reliving it. And then I laughed, a full, rich sound that echoed through the empty theater. Not because anything was particularly funny, but because I could, because that sound was mine to share freely, because the circle was complete. My phone buzzed with a text from my agent. Another major brand wanted me for their upcoming campaign, specifically requesting that distinctive laugh. My voice, my entire self, had found its place in the world, not by changing to meet others' expectations, but by embracing what made me unique. As I left the theater and headed toward my waiting cab, I called Layla. "How'd it go at Westlake?" she asked. "Perfectly," I said. "I think I finally laid some ghosts to rest." "Good," she replied. "Now, important question. Are you coming back for my opening night next month? I reserved front row center for the woman with America's most soothing laugh." "Wouldn't miss it," I promised, climbing into the cab. "But fair warning. If you're funny, I'm going to laugh. Loudly." "I'm counting on it," Layla said. "It's about time people heard the real you." As the cab pulled away from campus, I looked back at the place where I'd once lost my voice, figuratively at least, and smiled. Sometimes the journey back to yourself takes unexpected detours, but the destination is worth every step of the way, and sometimes the very thing you're taught to hide becomes the gift the world most wants to hear. 1 year later, I stood in the green room of a popular late-night talk show, waiting to be called for my segment. The Dreamies campaign had evolved into a broader wellness platform, with me as its primary voice and occasionally its face. My voice acting career had expanded to include animation, video games, and a critically acclaimed audiobook narration that had won industry awards. Life had changed in ways I never could have imagined on that night in the theater wings, when Vanessa's casual cruelty had silenced my laughter and derailed my confidence. The talk show host had specifically requested that I demonstrate my famous laugh during the interview, and while I no longer felt self-conscious about it, there was still a touch of surrealism in being celebrated for something I'd once been shamed for. A production assistant appeared at my elbow. "5 minutes, Miss Reynolds. By the way, I'm a huge fan. I fall asleep to your Dreamies meditations every night." I thanked her, straightened my jacket, and checked my reflection one last time in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was poised, confident, and at peace with herself in a way that would have seemed impossible 3 years ago. My phone buzzed with a text from Layla. "Turn on the financial news network right now." Curious, I asked the production assistant if there was a television in the green room I could use. She directed me to a small set in the corner, already tuned to a late-night replay of a business news program. I turned up the volume just in time to hear the announcer say, And in corporate news, Horizon Health has announced its acquisition of Broadway-bound Productions, a theater development company specializing in adapting properties for the stage. This move signals Horizon's expansion into entertainment beyond their healthcare and consumer products portfolio. I stared at the screen, putting the pieces together just as the announcer continued. Broadway Bound's first production under Horizon ownership will be Dreamweavers, a musical adaptation inspired by the popular Dreamies sleep aid campaign, scheduled to begin workshops next spring. My phone buzzed again with another text from Layla. Guess who just got cast as the lead in the workshop after 6 callbacks? Vanessa. She's literally going to be performing in a musical based on your commercial. I sat down heavily on the green room couch, a laugh bubbling up from deep in my chest. Not bitter or vindictive, just genuinely amused at the universe's persistent sense of symmetry. The Broadway musical adaptation had been mentioned as a possibility during recent brand meetings, but I hadn't been involved in those discussions, preferring to focus on the voice work aspects of the campaign. I certainly hadn't known casting had begun. The production assistant reappeared, gesturing that it was time to go on stage. As I followed her through the winding hallways toward the sound of audience applause, I composed a quick reply to Layla. Tell her congratulations from me. Looks like we both found our voices in the end. Then I stepped onto the brightly lit stage, ready to share my story, my success, and yes, my laugh. The sound that had once brought me so much shame, now bringing joy to others and fulfillment to me. Sometimes life's most painful moments are just preludes to our greatest transformations. Sometimes what breaks us ultimately remakes us, stronger and more authentic than before. And sometimes, when all is said and done, you really do get the last laugh.